Okay, we have tested the navigation view model's load method. But as you might remember, we have a to-do comment here in the main view model that we need to fix this. To create a navigation view model, we need to pass in a navigation data provider. So let's add that navigation data provider here to the data provider folder. Okay, and here we implement the interface. And in the getAllFriends method, we just use the data service and we return the result of its getAllFriends method. Now let's make this a bit more real world. When we go to the file data service, you see that it implements an iDataService interface. So we can also adjust our navigation data provider to take a constructor parameter of type iDataService. Okay, and we store it in a field. And now here in this method, we can just use that data service. Now the only problem is, when I go to that interface, you see that it extends iDisposable. So in our data provider, we should dispose that instance after we have called getAllFriends. But maybe we call getAllFriends of our data provider multiple times. So how do we actually dispose that service when we take it as a constructor parameter? The answer is quite simple. Instead of just taking that iDataService, we take a func that returns an iDataService. And we call it DataService Creator. Okay, so let's also adjust the field to that new name. Now here in the getAllFriends method, we can just create a using and we say var DataService and we call that func that will return a data service. Oh, and as you can see, I forgot to adjust the type of the field. So let's make this a func here as well. Alright, so now we take a func that returns an iDataService, and here in the getAllFriends method, we create an instance of the data service, we call the getAllFriends method on the data service, and the data service gets disposed. Alright, now we can go to the main view model and use that stuff. So let's pass in a new navigation data provider to our navigation view model constructor. The navigation data provider constructor needs a func that returns an iDataService. So let's pass in here a func and we just create a new file data service. Alright, now I'm done. Now we have the navigation view model that takes the navigation data provider that takes a func that returns a file data service. Alright, we can get rid of the to-do comment and let's run the application. As you can see, the friends are loaded, so our navigation view model works. Now let's adjust our code a bit to make it more real world. I want to adjust the architecture of the friend storage application a bit so that we optimize it for performance. In friend storage, we have the file data service and the navigation data provider that is accessing that service. The file data service returns a collection of friends. Each friend has several properties: ID, first name, last name, birthday, and is developer. And in a real-world application, a friend could even have a bunch more properties. And in a real-world application, the file data service would also live on the server, and the navigation data provider would live on the client. But when you look at the navigation, you will see that we just require the ID and the full name of a friend. So it's a bit of overhead to pass the full friend objects to the navigation. That means we load all the data at once. And I'm pretty sure you can understand that we need to find a different solution for the navigation. So for the navigation, let's get rid of the friends and let's return a collection of lookup items. A lookup item has just an ID and a display member. This allows you a generic use in your application. For example, you can use this model to fill up combo boxes in your user interface. Alright, so let's restructure our application now to use this lookup item in the navigation. Okay, here back in the Friend Storage application, let's add that lookup item class to our model assembly. Let's make the class public and we add the properties ID and display member. Okay, then we go to the data access and we just change the iData service interface. The getAllFriends method just returns lookup items. No one is allowed to load the full objects at once. Now we go to the file data service and we also need to adjust the getAllFriends method here. We say we return lookup items, and here we have the private readFromFile method of the file data service. It returns a list of friends. Now let's just select these friends into lookup items. Okay, I take the friend and I create a new lookup item. I set the ID of that lookup item to the ID of the friend and the display member of the lookup item to first name and last name of the friend. Okay, and I need to close the brackets here and we are done. Now we need to go to the navigation data provider in our client application and we also need to adjust here that we return lookup items. Okay, we save this, we go to the navigation view model and here we also have now a list of lookup items. But for the property, we keep the name friends as the lookup items are still representing friends. Now you see this is still underlined because we just have adjusted the data provider but not the interface. Now let's adjust the interface as well to return a lookup item. Alright, what's the last thing we need to do? We need to go to our test and adjust it there as well. Let's go first to our iNavigation data provider implementation. The getAllFriends method just returns lookup items. So let's create lookup items here and let's just set first name to display member and first name to display member. Alright. Now let's scroll up and here we just need to assert the display member. Okay, I already knew that I have to adjust this test, so I wrote it that it will be quite easy. Now let's see if we can run it. Okay, as you see, both test methods are still green. Let's run the application and you see the friends are not displayed anymore. So this shows you that unit tests are good, but you also need to test the application and you need to do integration tests. Now here we have a problem with the data binding in the user interface. So let's go to the view. This happens in the navigation view. In the navigation view, we have an items control that is bound to the friends property, which contains our lookup items. Now here you see a text block that is binding to first name and last name. Now we can remove this whole thing and we just say text binding display member. Okay, so now even the user interface is a bit simpler. I start it again and now you see the friends pop up with their names. Alright, now let's continue and let's see how we can test the main view model of the Friend Storage application.